All right, guys. Hey, so I pretty much messed up here. And so let me first start off by saying I apologize because I do not know what I did to my stream, but for whatever reason, um, it would not let me live stream out on the link that I sent out to everyone. So I did try to go in and drop links inside of Facebook and inside of Patreon and on the other um, live link inside the chat. I apologize, guys. Um, so I'm going to send out an email with this live stream. And even though no one will likely join me at this point, so I apologize. It's probably going to be a little drier than normal because I like to interact and there's no one to interact with. So hopefully maybe got the link and you'll join me. But if not, no worries, because we're going to keep it moving. And I actually think that this is so perfect considering the topic for the day, which is embracing imperfection, which means when something gets fucked up, you just keep going. All right. So that being said, I did just want to do a brief introduction and let everyone know kind of what this is and going forward, again, because we switched up our Patreon tiers and so everything is switching and transitioning, and I wanted to give a couple of months of what that would look like. But again, live stream not working. So, forgive me and keep rocking with me and we'll get it together. But I wanted to make sure that I went ahead and continue to go forward, hoping that possibly anyone would see the link and keep it moving. And I apologize, especially because if you were waiting, I saw that there were a few people waiting on the other link. And I tried to drop in the links, guys. I don't know if you can see them or not. So again, I'm so sorry if you were waiting on the other live stream and it just didn't work. All right, so welcome everyone to the Grind with Jice live coaching sessions. And just really briefly, guys, I wanted to circle back around and say that we were changing our coaching, and we did this based off of some feedback that I was receiving, and I wanted to make sure, one, that you knew that I was listening. Two, I appreciate you for reaching out, and three, thank you for helping me kind of craft a way that I think would be higher impact and a little bit better for everyone involved. And if you had already been on one of the other tiers, you're still able to participate at certain levels as we work on this transition out. And then this will be the only tier that is available and the only option that's available. But there is some time to transition. So I just want to welcome everybody. And I guess since I'm going to be on here just doing this thing by myself, I'm just going to roll on with it and we'll make it work. We'll make it do what it do. All right. So today's topic is about embracing imperfections. And as I said, how apt, because you know what? Mistakes happen and sometimes things don't go right, but we still have to keep pushing. So I wanted to talk from the idea around embracing imperfections from two standpoints. One is embracing imperfections in yourself, and the other is embracing imperfections in others. So I'm going to just jump into that, and we'll go from there. All right. So we have to understand that imperfections, or the idea of embracing our imperfections, and why I even wanted to start off with this topic is because there are oftentimes when I speak with clients and things where I recognize how much we are hindering ourselves from moving forward because things are not perfect. The other side of that is how many relationships we damage because we expect perfection in others. So that's kind of why we're talking about these two things. And I really think that it kind of sets this base level for a conversation around mindset and why mindset is so important to the overall process, because as you are beginning to grow and develop yourself and really work towards living that very intentional life, what we begin to find is that we have to see the flaws inside of ourselves so that we can continue working on and developing and growing those things, and recognizing that those flaws are opportunities for growth and opportunities for development in some cases. And in some cases, you just begin to recognize where your weaknesses are and you learn to strengthen yourselves in other ways. But also we have to recognize that just like we want grace when we are not perfect, right? We have to also be willing to extend that grace to others. And so that's kind of why we're talking about this on these two different sides. But also, as I mentioned, recognizing that as we're in that process of growing, as we're in that process um, of building this life that we really want to live, that a part of that is going to come with um, things being less than perfect. And if we are afraid to embrace what that looks like, and if we can't recognize the opportunities that exist inside of that, then often we are stopping ourselves and we're hindering ourselves. So the idea around embracing imperfections comes from the flip side of that is around perfectionism, right? So this idea that we must be perfect or we must show only the good qualities, right? And we tend to try and hide the things that are not perfect, the things that we're not good in, the things that, maybe we're ashamed of. And we tend to try and hide those things away so that everyone doesn't see them. And a lot of that is really exasperated, in my opinion, by things like social media, because that's when you get to see everyone else's display of their perfectionism, right? Their perfect life. And sometimes we get into this place where we are comparing ourselves, or we're feeling judged if we don't have those certain things. We're feeling ashamed and things of that sort, right? So recognize that a lot of this comes from a place of judgment and fear of being judged, right? So whether or not you are the person doing the judging, or you are the person where you are afraid of being judged, or maybe you actually are being judged, right? And so and you're worried about what those consequences can look like, or they make you feel some kind of way. And so you're looking to avoid that. That's where a lot of these behaviors and mindsets and ideas where they come from. So I want to talk a little bit about perfectionism specifically, because perfectionism, and I did not make up this um, definition, and I can't even 100% remember where the definition came from, but I pulled it and I have it. So just know that it's not my creative works, but perfectionism, as this definition that I'm about to give you lays out, and one that I really like and one that really resonates with me, is this idea that that perfectionism is an addictive belief system that when we're perfect, we can avoid or minimize being judged, blamed, or feeling ashamed. And the idea and the notion of that is, if you really think about it, it's ridiculous, right? Because so much of life is subjective, right? So I can come out here and I could think I absolutely killed it. It was exactly how I pictured it in my head, right? But that does not mean that what you saw um, is going to resonate with you, right? Or that what you saw matches what I saw. So even if we get it right, in someone's eyes, we can still get it wrong. And that's part of the issue with the idea of perfectionism, is because people are entitled to their own opinions about the end result of something, or the output of something, or how they think something should be. And those opinions, one, they're opinions, they're not facts. And then two, they're often rooted in their own experiences. They're often rooted in their own ideologies or their own upbringing and things of that sort. And so you can never compensate for what someone else's thought process actually is, right? And so we know this because we often say, like, we know no one is perfect. That includes you, right? That includes me. And so we know that, like, mentally, but emotionally we still can't reconcile that perfectionism doesn't exist. But oftentimes we're really, like, almost literally shooting for a non-existent target, right? Even if me and, let's say, my friends all think this is great, like, you and your friends could think it's not, right? Or you could think that most of it was great, but you would, if it was you, you would have done these things. So we begin to recognize that we're shooting for something that doesn't even exist, which is that everyone is going to see the exact same thing and feel the exact same way about it if we did it just right. That doesn't exist. And so this idea about imperfections inside of ourselves often stops us from being able to move forward. And it also, uh, it is, it, it causes us, there we go, it causes us to miss opportunities. So what we have to recognize is that high quality does not equal perfectionism. High quality does not equal perfectionism. What that means is that even if something is done to a high standard or to a high level, that does not mean that it was actually perfect, right? So there could be a lot of missteps. There could be a lot of things that didn't go according to plan, all built inside of something that still turned out to be high quality. On the flip side of that, low standards or low standards does not equal imperfection, right? And so just because something is imperfect does not automatically make it low quality or low standards. It could have not been perfect, but it can still be high quality, right? So we need to dissociate the idea that high quality equals perfect, and we also need to dissociate the fact that imperfect means low quality. And so, what we see on a personal level is that these imperfections often stop us from moving forward. So, I stated that. So, how could that be? So I'll give you an example using this exact same thing, right? This is not a perfect situation. I had people who were waiting on the live stream. I don't know if I was able to contact them in time. I had to then, change everything from all the work that I did, from creating a graphic to creating all my content in this one place and in this one stream. It did not work. I had to pivot and shift over here. And so, I could have just stopped. I could have been like, oh my God, this isn't working. And I just cancel it and I don't do anything at all. Right. That happens in a lot of places with us, especially as in our careers and in our business, right? And especially in our creative space, if we're thinking about creating something and we think it's not going to come out or turn out the way that we want it to, or the way that we think that it should, we will oftentimes just shut down and not move forward at all, right? And then the other side, that can also cause us to miss opportunities. And so there'll be places and spaces where you won't even attempt, you won't even try, because you don't think that you can hit the standard that you need to hit. And so this idea of perfectionism or lacking perfectionism can really cause us to miss out on opportunities or things, and it can hinder us in this growth process. So we have to recognize that a healthy sense of self-esteem is where we are able to then move forward regardless, right? So I have to feel pretty damn good about myself to still sit here and do a live stream with no one live and still go out and put it out there for your consumption, and put myself out there on the chopping block like that, right? And so when we recognize that we are allowing ourselves to not pursue opportunities or not complete or follow through with opportunities because we know that they're not going to be what we may have envisioned, or they're going to be less than what we wanted them to be, then that is the opportunity for us to really begin to develop who we are in the face of adversity, and who we are in the face of some trials and some challenges. And then that also gives us the opportunity to really grow and start to meet that place where we want to be, right? So rest assured, I will not come on next time without, making sure that all of my tech is how it should be. But that becomes a place of courage. That becomes a place where I can really step into who I'm becoming. And oftentimes, in many cases, it's also a place where we can really exercise our creativity and our innovation, right? So that means that when we see that something didn't go the way that we want it to, how do you clean it up? Or how do you do better next time? Or what can you make better? And that is where you begin to get into this space of innovation and creativity, if you allow yourself to. Because that place where you're fearful can also stop and hinder your creativity, where now you're not being creative at all because you're afraid of what the outcome is going to be. And you're afraid that it's not going to live up to someone else's expectation. And sometimes you're afraid it's not even going to live up to your expectation. So there's a lot of places in there and in that space where your own fear of judgment can really hinder your ability to grow, and it can hinder your ability to really work on and achieve your ultimate goal and your ultimate dreams. So I think that's very important for us to recognize inside of the growth process. And the growth process is really where it's all at, because at the end of the day, in order for us to get where it is that we're going, we have to be on this constant journey of becoming. So recognizing and embracing and loving who you are today, despite all of those flaws, but the process of forever getting better. So it doesn't mean that you accept something that's just low quality, right? And there is a difference between recognizing like this was low quality and this was high quality, but still imperfect. And I can still improve upon this high quality area. So when you're just at low quality, low frequency, low standard, absolutely feel free to really hold yourself accountable to getting better in those areas. But also be comfortable with patting yourself on the back when you have created something or built something or performed something or done something that was high quality, even if it didn't come out perfect. And I'm saying perfect and I'm pointing to my eyes like this or pointing to my temple like this because I mean perfect from the way that you saw it. Because again, remember that what everybody else sees might not be the same thing as what you see. And so we see that on both sides. Like, have you ever had an experience where you've done something and you just thought it was great and somebody else is like, yeah, that was cool. You know, it was all right. Right. And then on the other side, you could be like, man, I really messed that up. And somebody else is like, oh my God, that was awesome. So we just have to recognize that we have a standard that we see in our own mind and our own eyes. And whether we hit that standard or we didn't hit that standard, that we always have places that we can strive for better. But that better and that competition needs to be between self and not for what the outside world sees. Now, we also need to recognize that sometimes we get constructive feedback. So we could have thought something was great. And if someone said, well, actually, I think it wasn't all that, you don't have to take that to heart. You don't have to listen. But I always recommend actually taking a moment to listen, because then that way you can hear what their feedback was and you can decide whether or not you think that that feedback applies. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but you won't know if you can't objectively listen without necessarily getting in your feelings. There have certainly been times that I have found out that something that I did came out less than optimal, even when I thought it was pretty good. And then after that, I've had to listen to that feedback and think to myself, okay, I think they have a valid point. How can I improve upon this experience? Now, there have been other times where I've gotten feedback and I've really taken time to sit with it. I've slept on it and I come back and I'm like, nope, I think they're tripping. And so then I don't have to make those adjustments. But what I do have to do is, and I say have to in terms of if you're a person who is moving towards a greater level of accountability and you're moving towards a greater level of, internal dialogue and thinking about becoming that better or that next step, you do have to take that feedback in and rationalize whether or not this is feedback that you can see and you agree with and you're going to do something about, or whether or not it's feedback that you believe is not necessary, doesn't really hold any basis, or maybe it does and you still don't care and you think, whatever you have going on is great. So the other side of that is also beginning to look at how we view others. And I just want to talk about this on a smaller level, because a lot of this is really geared towards how you begin to really see yourself internally. But I want to have this conversation just briefly about also when we see imperfection in others, because just as much as we want and expect and hope to have that grace, we also have to put that out. So certainly you have the right to create boundaries. You have the right to protect yourself when you think that what someone else is doing is harmful to you, right? But there is oftentimes a space where you have this high level of expectation and you have not brought your expectations and that person's expectations to the same plane. And so you might be coming thinking that you were expecting ABC and they might have been bringing, XYZ, and you guys are not even talking the same language. But because you haven't had that conversation around expectations, then now you begin to feel disappointed, right? And that can go the other way. Like you can definitely come and expecting something low and get something higher. But in this sense, we're talking about when you come in expecting something higher and feel like you've gotten something lower without necessarily knowing what that person saw again in their vision. And then also recognizing human error, also recognizing that people were in their own space and place of growth. So when you're looking at that, scenario, I think it's important for us to extend that olive branch of grace there to say, hey, I get it. And then be able to come back around and have those conversations. And one of the reasons why I want to talk about that in particular is because I have seen, and this is my own experience, so I'm speaking out of that. I have seen places where people become very unforgiving when something doesn't go right. It means that you don't go back and visit that place of business. Maybe you opt not to do, to do business with them any longer. Maybe you decide to badmouth them, or you give them like a terrible review. I mean, unless I've had something just outrageous happen, like I don't go in and give somebody a bad review, my first time doing business with them. Oftentimes, if I feel like something wasn't done right, I will come back around and have a conversation. And I'm saying business, but it doesn't always have to be in a business relationship. Sometimes it can be a personal relationship where you have one level of expectation of what it means to be a friend, and someone else has another level of expectation of what it means to be a friend. Or maybe they have another capacity of what it means to be a friend. Maybe they just flat out make a mistake of what it means to be a friend, right? And so it doesn't really matter as to where or how or what type of relationship it is. The overarching idea is that people are people and they're fallible. And so when someone fouls up, you have to give them that opportunity to fix it, which means that we have to have those conversations. And they're tough conversations to have about something that you think wasn't done right, or something that you think could be improved upon. Sometimes people take those things really personally, and if they're not in a space where they can be introspective for themselves, that is possibly a place where that relationship could be damaged. But what I find to be often more damaging on the part of the individual, like on your own accountability piece with yourself, is not having that conversation and then being either passive aggressive about it, or allowing that bridge to be burned because you don't want to have a tough conversation. And as you know, wanting to really be in these places, in these spaces where we are digging into and becoming the better, a better self, a better version of ourselves, we have to be willing to have some of those tough conversations. So as I wrap up, I want to talk about a couple of things that we can do in particular on the side of ourselves becoming better. So one is recognizing when you are allowing perfectionism to kind of take root, or when you're allowing perfectionism to guide your actions, or when you're allowing the fear of imperfection to guide your actions. So one, just take the leap. Go ahead and take the leap. And when you do that, look for room to improve. So whenever you have finished with a product or a service or a meeting or an event or an interaction with someone or whatever the case might be, take that time to come back and look for where you can make those improvements. It's okay if that list is long, and it's okay if that list is shorter. But as you begin to look for those places and you make that kind of a game with yourself, that like, okay, after I have this, I'm going to come back and I'm going to see all the areas that I think I can improve, right? You can even seek feedback if you trust the people who you're getting feedback from. But you want to take that leap, and then you want to look for places to improve. And then you always want to walk into all situations with gratitude, with the gratitude and, that you can even make this attempt, or that this door is open to you, or that this possibility occurred, this opportunity was available, right? So recognize, where you have the ability to be grateful. And the last part is recognize that you are always in this journey of becoming. And so when you can accept and embrace that you are not who you need to be to get to that goal, then you can really enjoy the journey, I think, a little bit more. When I recognize that the person who I see in my vision for who I am when I'm at this level of success is not who I am today, then that means that every time I make those mistakes, I am very comfortable with the fact that I am in this process of becoming that person. And in order for me to grow, I have to have some of those hiccups and some of those times where things didn't go exactly right or according to plan, just in order for me to see myself on to the next steps. So these become opportunities for growth, and not places where I feel like I have failed, right? So I have to not look at or equate imperfection to failure, but instead imperfection to opportunity for growth. So one more time, take the leap, look for room to improve, be sure to practice gratitude for what you have and where you are, and recognize that you are on this journey to becoming who you need to be in order for you to reach that next goal. So I hope that you find this helpful. Please do recognize that when we are on live, there will be an actual question and answer session. And then also I can have some of your feedback and we can kind of have that dialogue that would happen inside of a live chat. That is not obviously happening here on this particular video. But again, I just want to thank you for your patience, and I will have all these tech issues sorted out for the next time. So with that, I am going to sign off. I'm going to send out this video so that you have an opportunity to view it, as well as some follow-up inside of our interactive worksheet. So again, thank you so much. And I will be live inside of our Facebook group this week, interacting as well. And I look forward to interacting with all of you there.